I mean, when I first started teaching at the Air Force School, boy, oh boy, was that a fucking rude awakening. Like just the things that you're allowed to say, the way that you're allowed to insult people, everything was totally different. I had to basically change my entire leadership style.
Because in the Marine Corps, in the Marines, you could say anything, but in the Air Force, right? Like, it was
no, you can't say shit. Like even calling somebody fat, like you weren't even allowed to call people fat. It's a Thursday edition here on Zero Block 30, and today we have the draft. I'm just kidding. We don't have the draft. Just doing a little draft goof, and we're not doing a draft today, but we are going to do a little whistle. Go ahead, Kate. Yes.
Congrats to ZBT on letting a woman in the draft.
Yes.
Very progressive of you guys while it lasted.
For the
Thank
first
you.
time,
we're nothing if not equal.
Thank you.
Exactly right.
Carry on.
Today's show is going to be brought to you by our good friends at WhistlePig. They have a new bourbon out. It's 100% proof as well. It's 100% proof bourbon. It stands taller and bolder than the pack. There's no other bourbon or rye duo on the market that offers this big of age proof and mash for a full send-on flavor. Piggyback 100% rye is the savory side of whiskey, while Piggyback 100% proof bourbon is the sweeter side of the whiskey. You can't really have a bar without having both of them sitting on top of there. It's 100% for all, 100%. Piggyback 100% rye, Piggyback 100% proof bourbon is 100% the good stuff. Get your bottles at whistlepig.com or at a local shop near you. It is fantastic. I'm going to have a little glass tonight while I'm watching a little bit of Thursday night football. Cannot wait. Hopefully you have a little glass while you're watching this show on YouTube, which we remind you to go subscribe. But today we have 3 rounds of the magazine big show today. Round number 1. The Army senior leaders want troops to stop wasting time on silly training that Army senior leaders require of all troops.
No.
Honest to God, when this one came out, it reminded me of a Duffel Blog article or The Onion, because it just seems, it's just too fucking on the nose. Round number 2, Beto O'Rourke is running for governor of Texas. He tells me how he'd improve my state, or I will, in fact, have to move. Round number 3, lots of potty mouths join the military. 1 unit in the Air Force has come up a way to spell all that naughty talk, my friends, and it's about damn time. I mean, when I first started teaching at the Air Force School, boy, oh boy, was that a fucking rude awakening. Like just the things that you're allowed to say, the way that you're allowed to insult people, everything was totally different. I had to basically change my entire leadership style.
Because in the Marine Corps, in the Marines, you could say anything, but in the Air Force, right? Like, it was
no, you can't say shit. Like even calling somebody fat, like you weren't even allowed to call people fat. And if you can't call somebody fat as a Marine staff NCO, what do you have really in your toolbox?
I mean, we used to be a country, a proper country. That's
proper country.
Kate rolls her eyes, but I know Corporal Mannion didn't like fat bodies either.
I never said a word.
You did.
I popped out of my uniform once, so I kind of was at certain times.
Yeah, but then you got back into discipline, and I remember the stories of Corporal Katie going.
No, I just bought a bigger
dog.
I just bought a bigger uniform, is what I did.
Yeah, too bad you never got the maternity camis when you were pregnant. That would have been a stunt walking through.
That would have been an absolute
little spandex front.
Egregious.
All right, I have to say something. Those always looked extremely weird to me. Like, I think childbirth
uniforms are the worst
because men designed them is why.
Well, I think it's just because you have a uniform that's not designed to look that way. That looks they're really. How could you possibly do it? How could
they finally started fixing them recently? I think now that they're like, all right, we sort of care about you all. They're starting to do it.
I saw the first one of my old Marines. She was like 8.5 months pregnant or something like that. And she came in it was boots and utes cleaning. And so she was like, fuck it, I'm going to go boots and utes too. And it was at the end of her pregnancy. So it was like the legit drawstring uniforms that are like fully go out. Oh. And I actually thought, I was like, that's kind of badass, man, to not give a fuck to the level like everybody else's boots and utes. This is what I'm going to do too. Cause I told her like, you don't have to do it because that uniform looks weird. And she's like, no, I'm still going to do it. If everybody else is boots and utes, I'll go boots and utes too. So I'm like, all right,
hell yeah,
let's fucking do it. Because sometimes in the military, when you're supposed to do things, you do them no matter what, even if you look bad, even if it takes too much time, even if it's going to cause some commotion, if it's going to be difficult for the troops, you still do it because an order is an order. And do they say this in the Army where it goes mission accomplishment and then troop welfare? Is that a saying in the Army?
I don't want to speak out of turn. I really don't remember one way or the other.
Okay,
I think it was though.
So we always say mission accomplishment first and then troop welfare, which essentially just means it doesn't matter how the troop feels. You have the mission, get the mission done, and then the troop welfare goes next. That's essentially what the sergeant majors of the Army and all the other brass and the head shed were saying this week about annual training, which is something that every single troop hates. So round number one, we're going to get into this story that's brought to us from Haley Britsky over at Task and Purpose. Kate, what do we have here? Today's show is also brought to you by our good friends at Rocky Boots. We've been talking about Rocky Boots for a long, long time. Rocky Boots, they have the best boots in the biz. If you're going to be going out and you're going to be doing some hiking, if you're still in the military, if you're a first responder, anything that requires you to be up on your feet working all damn day, even if you're working in a grocery store, you're working at Home Depot, you're working at wherever, you need to be wearing some damn Rocky Boots on your feet. They have, if you're working out in the yard, and if you're working in like a swampy environment, they have the jungle boots that have little holes on the side that'll let the water seep out. They're super comfortable. You can wear them all day, all night, wherever you're working. If you're working the night shift, go to rockyboots.com, enter the promo code ZBT at checkout. You're going to get 25% off of your boots. Also, the t-shirts there are super comfortable. Get the gray one. It says Rocky Boots on it. You'll look lovely. You'll look handsome. You'll look good, and your feet will look good too. Go to rockyboots.com, enter the promo code ZBT at checkout. You're going to get 25% off on your next pair of boots.
All right. In an absolutely clear bit of messaging from the top, Army leadership is now telling soldiers not to complete the dozen or so online courses it requires them to take. At a press event on Tuesday at Fort Benning, Sergeant Major of the Army Michael Grinston was very blunt, instructing commanders to not assign the courses the Army made mandatory for service members. Don't do it, Grinston, the top enlisted soldier said. Set priorities for your organization and fight for it. And
off the top, I automatically do not know what the fuck that means. Like,
what do you mean? This is so clear to me.
No, because he has
not clear.
He has the authority not to assign it. So it's getting assigned from somewhere.
And he doesn't have the authority to assign shit. He's the sergeant major. Like, he can't do that.
Yeah,
like,
I'm confused.
The sergeant major doesn't assign that. It's the chief of staff that ultimately has the authority to do all this stuff. So you're saying don't do it. This is an order. Like, it's not an option. This is mandatory annual training that the sergeant major of the Army is saying, don't worry about it, while he's standing next to the chief of staff of the Army. Like, they're together.
But I will say, I think that Sergeant Major Grinston is the only one who's sane here then, if he's the only one saying don't do it.
Oh, no, I agree.
No, I support
just
that.
To make clear that we think he's in the right to say it,
Yes.
though maybe sure it's a little confusing, I guess. But I think he's right. I'm assuming it's not just obviously it's the Army too. We used to have like 30 to 35 like stupid little online classes we had to take every year.
I have them right here, Kate. Let me rifle through them, then you can make your point.
Yeah.
So the ones that you have to take every single year, and this is I got this one from the Army. Acceptable use policy at Fort Campbell, anti-terrorism awareness, combating trafficking in person, Constitution Day and Citizens Days, DOD cyber awareness training, Operation Security, sexual harassment and sharp training, alcohol and substance, EEO anti-harassment, no fear training, operational excellence refresher, suicide prevention, threat awareness, and on and on and on. And the sergeant major of the Army is saying, don't do it.
And basically what these are, like, a lot of those topics are important to know, but all it really ever did was cover the Army's ass or cover the Marine Corps' ass. So if a troop did sexually harass someone, well, they took the training, so now blah, blah, blah. Like, they had proof online that everybody took the training and knew better, whatever. It was like a way to cover their ass. But really, the reality that everyone knew and everyone knows is that we just fucking click until we get through it. No.
Or you assign one junior troop to do it for everybody in your platoon.
Because I was the only woman in my unit, the higher ups used to make me take theirs for them. They'd be like, everybody go PT, man, you come back in here. You're going to do our MCIs, like all that shit, like too, like little fake little classes about math.
The Marine Corps Institute. Yeah.
They used to have me do those as well. Like, and everybody knows you cheat, you click through it, and no one absorbs a single thing from these classes. So the real training would be if they actually got in a classroom and didn't do death by PowerPoint, they actually had effective, good teaching instead. Like, do that.
Well,
instead.
so I'll play devil's advocate because I agree with what you guys are saying, but at the same time, you have to set a bare minimum, because if you just said, all right, don't do it. I mean, the trainings that Chaps just listed out, some of those are important. You need to have, alcohol training. You need to have sexual harassment training. I do believe some of those trainings are very important and need
Well,
to
that's what
happen.
I'm saying. Find another way to do it that it's not that the troops aren't just like click, 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 like
Right.
No.
But I just think it's then it's on the individual leaders, I think, to figure out a better way, because the easiest way for them to disseminate at the top level is just say, all right, cool, just do this online course. But then to your point, no one's paying attention to any of the content they're consuming. They're just clicking through, and they probably, in a lot of cases, hey, here's all the answers. Just click these. And so we can say we did it.
In an organization that you're not allowed to sue, it's amazing how many DOD decisions are made simply for accountability or record keeping. Even when you go to the doctor, like if you go to the doctor on base, most of the doctors aren't listening to what you're having to say. They're just documenting what you're saying so that when you go to the VA eventually, or whenever they have to have reports there, everything is just about writing it down. And that's to say, I agree. I think this is the Sergeant Major version of good initiative, bad judgment. If this is really what you think, Sergeant Major, why not tell the Chief of Staff, who has the ability to say, we are going to stop all this annual training and we're going to come up with a new method, a new way of doing this. But you can't, as a Sergeant Major, I don't know how you stand up there with an order that you're supposed to follow and say, don't follow the order. I mean, we talk about a few good men all the time. Like, do you really have the ability to decide what orders are major ones and which aren't? Like, do you really want the small unit leader to decide what order is important and which one isn't?
No.
Well, I'm assuming that after this now, and after this is out, they'll kind of sort that out now.
We'll say that after you sort it.
Right. But yeah, right now soldiers have like a dozen of these classes they have to take, and it's a huge pain in the ass because the commanding officers then have to make sure that every single person in their battalion has taken these classes and blah, blah. It's like herding cats, and it's such a pain in the ass. And if you don't have all of them done, you're not deployable. You're not this, you're not that. And it's just like an enormous gaggle fuck.
Which all those orders and regulations are designed and approved and issued by the Chief of Staff of the Army. Like, that's what I'm saying. All those different things, like you're not deployable, all those things are policies that are put in place by these leaders. If you don't like it, don't tell the troops you don't like it, so don't follow it. Change the fucking order. Like, to me, that's as no-brainer as it gets in the military. You don't like the order, adjust.
Right, exactly. And also, the other thing you need to adjust, go back and look at this curriculum and decide, all right, what is actually important and what's just here because this is something that's always been here and we've always done it. You're going to tell me that I don't know what the heck Constitution Day and Citizenship Day is. I don't know if that's necessarily important. OPSEC, are you a
clicking on that little fax machine in the far corner of the little building? Get out of my face. It's just a waste of time. And the problem is, I think, Kate, a lot of times when you have these big units where you'll go in and you'll sit down for the classes, it's one, having somebody who's an effectual instructor and teaching that, and two, has a little bit of credibility, because a lot of times, a lot of these issues that you're seeing, maybe you don't have as much credibility, maybe you don't have the knowledge, and you're just essentially reading off of a slide as well.
Yeah. There's no faster way to put somebody to sleep than just get in front of a room and just start reading through a script and showing them slides. People just zone out right away. They can tell you don't care about it. They know you don't want to be there. It's a horribly ineffective way to provide this training.
I just appreciate that he's calling out some of the bullshit that we know it's just wasting time. And this is part of he's been on this kick where he's trying to stop making life difficult for his soldiers. And part of this too, he's been the only one I've seen going off about the mold in the barracks and being like, no, we're actually going to fix this. He's saying this is dumb bullshit. And we're going to, hopefully, I'm sure he's going to follow through and try and make this stop happening. Other Army officials were even more dismissive of the courses, which again are mandatory by the Army. So he was at this summit, I guess you call it, this big meetup the last few days. And apparently a lot of people were echoing it. McConville, who's that? Some big Army person said, people actually do this stuff. You don't have time. And so they're all just agreeing. So I'm sure now
that's the Chief of Staff that was saying,
the Army Chief of Staff.
That's like the Army Commandant that's saying that.
So maybe they should have switched it first before they said it, but it sounds like they're probably going to be switching things up now that they all said it out loud, that Sergeant Major Grinston has finally cleared the air on this and been like, we all think this is fucking dumb, right? But
you also miss an opportunity at a symposium like this to motivate the fucking shit out of the room. Imagine the PAO that stands in the back when the Chief of Staff of the Army is standing up there and he's like, hey, listen up. The finest army in the world doesn't need all kinds of bullshit training classes. We're canking them. We trust our small unit leaders, and all these 12 classes that we used to do online, that we used to dictate how and when you do it, that's done. We're putting that back into our small unit leaders. We saw what happened in Russia and Ukraine. Russia failed because they don't have the NCO Corps. We do. We're giving it back to you. Lead and train. You do that, the entire fucking room goes bananas. NCOs feel empowered. Young officers feel empowered by empowering their junior NCOs. It makes the organization better. I love what Sergeant Major Greenson does in a lot of ways, but you cannot stand there and say, don't follow the order. You can't. You just can't.
And so, even better would be like, and besides these dumb click classes that, if you look at the statistics, have done nothing, we're actually going to tackle sexual harassment and suicide and all these things. We're going to figure
We've been doing this training for 12 fucking years, or 20 years longer. And our sexual harassment, sexual assault went up last year. So clearly the way that we're doing it's not working.
What you just like in any organization, in any business in the world, if things weren't working and you were losing money, as an example, you wouldn't say, well, we're just going to keep doing it that way. No, you would assess and you would adjust. And I think it's important, one line here that talks about how this is especially important as it shifts its focus, the Army, that is, away from the Middle East and counterinsurgency and towards more conventional large-scale conflicts. I don't need anti-terrorism training at the small unit level anymore. Sorry. It's just not. I mean,
all that shit was designed right after 9/11, whenever it's like, our people are going to be following you when you're going in. Remember, there used to be,
I'm a Lance Corporal in a Hyundai Sonata listening to the Backstreet Boys.
I used to go, I mean, our general level officers in Okinawa in 2004, whenever, I mean, still pretty fresh in Iraq and Afghanistan, they would drive around Okinawa, a foreign fucking country, with their 1 or 2 star rank emblems on their windshield, so people would know. And I'm like, I have to take an anti-terrorism class that tells me to take multiple steps and multiple routes to a fucking shopette on base, but this dumb old bitch can drive around Okinawa saying I'm a 3-star general to everybody, every single passerby? No way. It just doesn't make any sense.
Because God forbid they don't know he's a 3-star general.
Operational security, general. But you have every single officer on base has a blue base decal that goes by. Makes zero sense at all. Yeah. But there is
my favorite was the brand new Hummer on base that had a little Lance Corporal chevron sticker right on the top windshield. It's like, fuck yeah.
I used to like the ones where people that knew that they were kind of like shitbags, I guess, not really shitbags, but got demoted, where it'd be like Lance Corporal, or be PFC, Lance Corporal, Corporal, Lance Corporal, Corporal, Sergeant, Corporal, Lance Corporal.
It would show their pathway.
Yeah. That's some good shit. All right, let's move on to round number 2. We're going to bring on Beto O'Rourke, who's running for governor of the state of Texas. I enjoy talking to him, and you're going to see I don't really both sides it. I just kind of say, I agree with Beto because I do. Here's Beto O'Rourke. Now in Zero Blog 30, I'm privileged to have somebody who is currently running for the governor of my great state of Texas. He is also a congressman out of El Paso, and he's been doing things for veterans for a long time. We have Beto O'Rourke on the show. Beto, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's a huge honor to be here, and I've had a chance to meet you in person, listen to your show, and now being on with you. Big honor. So thank you for this.
I'm excited because there's a lot of talk that we've over the last couple of months here, and really the last year, we've talked a lot about the National Guard, not just in Texas, but around the country. Obviously, with you on the show running for governor, we want to really address what's going on in Texas. From your perspective, how are you viewing Operation Lone Star? And as governor, what would you do differently?
The perspective I start with is that of the Guard member. So, traveling to Webb County or Zapata County or Maverick or going to Del Rio and listening to our fellow Texans who are the fewer than 1% who signed up since 9/11 to wear the uniform of this country, put their lives on the line. So many of them in very personal terms have said, look, for example, this one guy said, I grew up in Houston. And I was there in 2017 when Hurricane Harvey hit. And I saw these members of the Guard literally save people from drowning in my neighborhood. And I said, that's what I want to do. Or others who wanted to serve in different capacities, wanted to be able to serve overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan, signed up for that reason with the Guard. To a person from those I've listened to, they did not sign up for this involuntary activation that lasts a year, where they had less than a week to say goodbye to their kids and their community and their career. and to be posted not necessarily right on the border, sometimes a couple of miles away from the border, without any power to detain or to arrest. Maybe supplementing in some places what CBP and local sheriff's departments are able to do by spotting somebody and radioing that in. But it's really been for most of those with whom I've spoken, a really miserable experience. They were taken from jobs where they were badly needed. I talked to a nurse from San Antonio, for example, who said, I talk to my colleagues back at the hospital every week, and they're hurting for nurses right now. And here I am in a Humvee, without access to a toilet for 12 hours a day, at the beginning of sleeping in a man camp, 18 people to a trailer. Mm-hmm. This is just freaking miserable. Right. And we should be able to do better. And I think everyone agrees that we have a real challenge at the border, and everyone agrees that we should do something about it. I just think that listening to those Guard members, we should come to the table with some solutions about how people can follow the law coming to our country, make sure there's a safe, legal, orderly path if you want to work here or join family or seek asylum. And then certainly if you want to do us harm, I want to make sure that we're able to stop you if you're into trafficking fentanyl or smuggling human beings. So I think ending this involuntary activation, and then being very open to supplementing what Border Patrol and local law enforcement are doing with some voluntary activation of some certain number of Guard members. That's the gist, chaps, that I've gotten back from listening to the women and men who are actually serving there and understand this perhaps better than anyone else. And last thing that I want to say, you mentioned I served in Congress for 6 years on the House Veterans Affairs Committee. I just think the best way to honor the service of those who are wearing the uniform right now is to listen to them. And that's what I'm trying to do as I travel this state. And I always tell them, look, I don't care who you voted for last time. I don't even care who you vote for this next time. I just want to make sure that we do right by you. And there's a good chance I'll be the next governor of the state of Texas, and I want to learn from you. So I make sure that we honor your commitment by using you only when it's absolutely necessary to do so.
And I think one of the things that I learned going to the town hall where you were speaking is some of the passion that you have for veterans inside the state of Texas, because I think on the outside looking in, you look at a state like Texas and you think they're doing everything right. Like, and by and large, there's a lot of great things. This is one of the main reasons why I still live in the state. It's because of the way that we treat veterans with property taxes for somebody who has a disability like I do. But getting further down the road, I want to talk about some of the accomplishments that you've had for veterans, because a lot of times when you look at those numbers of what Texas is doing great, you don't see the things that we could be improving on. And one of the things that you talked about was the unhoused veteran population here in Texas. Can you talk about how you would take some steps to eliminate that or drastically reduce it?
Yeah, we are the 9th largest economy on the planet, a $2 trillion gross domestic product. And yet tonight there will be hundreds of veterans in Texas sleeping under bridges, on the side of road, on a park bench. And we don't lack for the resources or wealth to connect them with the home and the roof over their head that will open up so many other opportunities. We've just lacked the political will to do that. And in fact, as you probably know very well, there are some cities, including San Antonio, that have made getting to functional zero a top policy priority. And they back that up with the resources to get that done. I just want to make sure that we're doing that at the state level, that we spare no expense to ensure that every veteran has a home. And then we've got to supplement that with connecting to care, primary care, behavioral health care, especially in rural and underserved communities where so many veterans are telling me, look, it may take not days or weeks, but months to get an appointment. I might have to drive hundreds of miles to go to Audie Murphy in San Antonio or to the VA here in El Paso or wherever it is that they have to travel to. We've got to make sure that we open up more care within the community if that's an option that veterans want to pursue. And then there are a number of other things that I talked about at that town hall meeting, including ending the criminalization of marijuana, in large part because so many veterans have told me that they feel like their one option from the VA all too often is a prescription to an opioid, to which they may become addicted and potentially die. What about access to cannabis that relieves their symptoms, allows them to sleep, restores their appetite? Today, they're by and large a criminal in the eyes of the law for possession of a substance that is legal in so much of the rest of the country. So I've learned from listening to veterans.
And before you go there,
I
I gotta say, I'm on the compassionate use program, like that's here in Texas. It's been the last 2 years. That thing is garbage. Like it is just trash. For example, I got an email this morning. We're having a great deal. Go in 20 different gummies that are 100 milligrams of THC. That's 5 a piece. Anywhere else you go, you could buy it over the counter in California, New York, New Mexico, wherever else. That's going to cost you maybe $10, maybe. But we're taking this program that's supposed to be for veterans or people with epilepsy, people that are suffering from seizures, and making them pay these great out-of-pocket costs every day. That would be that would be like a 3-day supply for me. It's nothing. We have to do more. I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. But as the governor of Texas, working with the VA, how much say will you have as governor over a federal department in the VA? How much can you really do?
It's really up to us, the people of Texas. We know that the VA will always be under-resourced and short-staffed. It shouldn't be, because this country spares no expense to send somebody off to war, but really seems to skimp when they return. So I kind of feel like Texas has this opportunity to make up the gap, and using the Texas Veterans Commission or Health and Human Resources or other state agencies to make sure that whether it's housing or connecting veterans to behavioral health care, or we talked about standing up a Texas-based burn pit registry to build on the great work that Rosie and Leroy Torres and other great Texas veterans have done to get recognition and federal resources. It's just that we wait too long in this country, 40 years for the Vietnam era veteran to treat Agent Orange as a presumptive condition for connections to cancers. I just don't want to roll the dice with the VA and whoever might be president next that we will get the support we need. Let's make this a Texas-based focus. And so, that burn pit registry is another example. There's a great guy running for land commissioner, which, as you know, has purview over TVC and many veterans functions. His name is Jay Clayburgh, who's
probably the third most important position in Texas. Would you agree with that? Like third or fourth most important spot in Texas to be land commissioner. It's huge here.
It's huge, and it has so much to do, obviously, with our land, our water, and our air, but it has a lot to do with how we fund care for veterans, including these veterans homes that had frightening levels of death during the COVID pandemic, far worse than almost any other institutional care facility across the state of Texas. Where's the accountability? Where's the resources? Where's the follow through for veterans? You need a land commissioner who really believes in that. Jay Clayburgh, who's from not too far from where you are, is focused on that. So I'm excited he's on the ticket as well.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too. One of your friends that I talk to pretty often, and he's been on this show a couple of times, Will Hurd, I asked him the last time he was on the show if he sees a problem, because I was doing some reading about the Freedom Index, and I'm a big freedom guy. I think that people who wear the uniform of the United States Marine Corps usually are. So I'm a freedom guy. Our Freedom Index for the United States has gone down in the last 15 to 20 years. There's been a steady drop in the amount of freedom that the rest of the world and the people who do those types of things see us happen. In Texas, it's a big problem with liberties being taken away, individual liberties being taken away. As governor, what types of individual liberties will you focus on strengthening and ensuring that Texas will allow these types of people to live here?
Yeah, I mean, this country has kind of distinguished itself based on our fight for freedom, and I don't think anyone guards it more jealously than the Texan. And to your point, even more so the person who's worn the uniform and swore that oath not to the president or a political party, but to our Constitution, which protects those freedoms and rights. But here in Texas, they're under attack unlike any other place. I mean, literally the right to vote, to freely and fairly choose the person who will represent or serve you in this position of public trust. For women, it is the freedom to make their own decisions about their own body and to decide their own future. We now see freedoms and protections for the LGBTQ community under attack in this state, perhaps unlike any other place in the developed world. Whether it's Abbott's attack on transgender kids and pursuing their parents under the accusation of child abuse, or this idea that they're going to debate a Don't Say Gay bill in the state of Texas, or Justice Clarence Thomas saying, hey, after overturning Roe versus Wade, next on the block is contraception, then same-sex intimacy, then marriage equality. I guarantee you, if we don't change course, those things will come to a head here in Texas before they will anywhere else. The flip side of this is I think that we are so lucky to be alive at this moment, at the time that every freedom and right that we care about is under attack. Few generations get the chance to fight for these things when they're literally on the line, and that has fallen to us. And your kids, like my kids here in El Paso, they're counting on us because they don't get a voice or a vote in this election, but through the work that we do. And so my call goes out to Republicans, to independents, to Democrats, to folks who've never voted in an election before and don't consider themselves aligned with any of the parties. The things that make us Americans and proudly Texan, those things are on the line right now, and we've got to save them. And only by voting and participating in this election and by winning are we going to be able to do that.
And by knowing our story, my family's story, that my kid is one of those kids. And I'm one of those parents that would be investigated for child abuse, which to me and how much I love my kids is absolutely insane that's something that I'll have to do. If you don't win, I most likely will have to leave the state and go to another state that will welcome a veteran in a family like mine. That being said, as governor, if you do win, because a lot of times here in Texas, the legislation on both the House and the Senate here might still be very conservative. As governor, what can you do to step in the gap to ensure statewide freedom?
We've got to do everything we can to work with everyone who is out there. And I think by refusing to judge anybody based on who they voted for last time or the letter next to their name or any other difference between us, I think we're going to find a hell of a lot of common ground before us. When I was in Congress working on legislation for veterans, I was in the minority, seeking friendships with people in the majority like Will Hurd, so we could get the job done, expanding access to mental health care for veterans who had an other than honorable discharge, for example. Got that bill passed in the House and Senate, got Donald Trump to sign that into law. I think when we boil this down to just people doing right by and for one another, we're going to surprise the rest of the country, the rest of the world, with what Texans are ready and willing to do. On this fight for the freedom for women, for example, to make their own decisions. Texas women won protection for that right back in 1973. It was Jane Roe and then her attorneys, Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington, 3 Texas women who made that happen. On LGBTQ rights, again, it's been Texans who've been at the forefront of this fight. They've been the ones advocating. They've also been the ones serving in uniform, protecting the Constitution that then protects these rights for our fellow Texans. So I think we've got more invested than anyone else. And it's not defined, I know you know this, but I think a lot of people need reminding that this is not defined by a party affiliation or anything else. I mean, there are Republicans as well as Democrats who cherish these freedoms, who are going to fight for them. And as governor, I'm going to bring us all around the table. And I'm going to say, look, we all do so much better when we treat each and every single one of us equally under the law. We'll all benefit from the great things that your kid is going to do over the course of their lives, the great things that my kids are going to do over the course of their lives. If they're here in the state of Texas, if we hound them out because we persecute them, they're going to go do great things, but they're going to go do it somewhere else for some other people. I want them to do it here for the state of Texas. This is in our common interest to do the right thing. And I would never sleep on Texas. We are, when the chips are down, like literally the lights went out last February, total strangers were knocking on each other's door to see how they could help one another out. Never asked, is your kid gay? Did you vote for Republican last time? Are you an immigrant? Just, I'm here. Can I help you? I love that. That's who we are. And I don't ever want to lose that. I want to build on that. I think that's how we answer your question and get back on the right track.
And I think that's a great answer. Obviously, I think that's a good answer. One more question that I have. You spoke about rights. There's a group that wants me to ask you, and I want to ask you too, because I think your answer is good, gun control, because you talked about having our rights, the constitutional rights, the Second Amendment. As governor of Texas, what would your steps and what would your recommendation to the Tex Ledge about what we do about the gun problem in Texas?
I don't think any state's in a better position to lead on this one than Texas. Like Most of us, I grew up in a home where we had firearms, where we were taught how to use the firearm, but also the responsibility that comes with owning it. And that's the same thing that Amy and I are teaching our 3 kids here in El Paso. We have this really great long tradition of responsible gun ownership in the state of Texas. So there's no reason that we should accept that 5 of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history have taken place in this state in just the last 5 years. And that gun violence is the leading cause of death now for kids and teenagers in the state of Texas. I mean, that is not us. So what are some common sense steps that we can take? This is one where I've gone out and listened to people in big cities and rural counties, gun owners, non-gun owners, just about everyone. Here's where I think the common ground is. One, we should raise the minimum age of purchase for an AR-15 or an AK-47 to 21. That won't satisfy everyone. It won't prevent every instance of gun violence. But when you look at the fact that an 18-year-old could legally walk into a gun store in Uvalde and buy 2 AR-15s and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, when you look at the fact that there are so many Republicans and Democrats who can at least agree on raising the age to 21, that would have purchased 3 more years for some kind of intervention in that young man's life, who, by the way, didn't try to get his hands on the AR-15 when he was 16 or 17. He waited the law. He patiently followed the law. He patiently waited for his 18th birthday. If we couple that with a red flag law on Texas terms, we don't have to take anyone else's red flag law, come up with it on our own terms. But again, looking at Uvalde, that young man was telling his friends that he wanted to do something like this. They called him the school shooter before he ever walked into the school and shot anybody. Give law enforcement the ability through due process to intervene before it's too late. And then the last idea is a universal background check. I mean, almost everyone can get behind this because most people who buy a firearm through a federally licensed gun dealer already go through one. The loophole in Texas, by and large, is through a private seller who isn't required to ask you for a background check. That's what happened in Midland, Odessa in 2019. A guy was rejected from a federally licensed gun dealer, bought that same AR-15 from a private seller, used it against people in his own community. 8 were dead afterwards. So, if we don't allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good, if we're willing to find some consensus and yes, even some compromise on those 3 things, we could defend the Second Amendment while doing a far better job of protecting the lives of the people in this state.
There you go. Beto, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Today's show is also brought to you by our good friends at Rhoback. Rhoback is an activewear brand that makes high-quality hoodies, polos, and tees. If you've seen me dress up to go out on some date nights with my wife and I wear this fire little dinosaur polo, it's got tiny little dinosaurs all over it. Some of them have like peaches. They got the shape of Texas. They got all kinds of stuff. It's the best golfing polos in the biz, and I would just say just the best polos in the biz. The collars don't get jacked up. I'm not even on the ad read, but the collars don't get jacked up. They fit you nicely, like on my arms. It makes me look like I'm still in shape, even though I'm very much not in shape. Rhoback is the best in the biz. And plus, they got a little logo that looks like my puppy, which is a Rhodesian Ridgeback. That's where they get the name from. They're fantastic. Use the promo code 0 on Rhoback. You're going to get 20% off your first order. They got all kinds of prints. They got all kinds of designs. The quarter zips are unbelievably comfortable. It's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all polos, quarter zips, hoodies, and tees with the code 0. Make sure you check out all their gears. Trust us, it's life-changing. It's the best polos in the biz. Not even bullshitting you. They're the best in the biz. Super comfortable. And one of the polos, if you usually wear polos, they shrink like shit. Typically, these stay the same size. I've had some Rhoback polos for like 4 years. 4 or 5 years. I wear them all the time, and they're still the same exact size. Unbelievable clothes. You got to get them Rhoback. I will say, Beto, in that interview, he's one of the more difficult people that I've ever interviewed. And not because he's not well-spoken. He's obviously a very talented speaker. It's because he answers so thoroughly. Like when I ask him a question, he answers it so thoroughly. Normally you have the opportunity for a follow-up or something like that. But at the end of his questions, when he was done talking, I was just like, okay, yeah.
All right.
Well, that's
next
a thorough
thing,
answer.
on to the next one. Yeah.
Being a skilled speaker is actually good.
Yeah.
There you have it.
All right, let's move on to round number 3, which today it's a special one, my friends, because there's just been there's been a list that's been going around. It's from our friends over in the Air Force. I'm not sure what unit this is, but it looks like it's Security Forces Squadron. That's what SFC means. So it
I was
says
like special forces.
yeah,
They can cuss
I
all
used to
they
think
want.
that too.
Yeah.
Security forces. So it says in the subject line, language in the workplace.
Uh-oh.
Point number 1, it is brought to the leadership's attention that some individuals, cons, are using language that is inappropriate in the work environment. Due to complaints from some of the more sensitive members, this conduct will no longer be tolerated. I like how you call out the sensitive folks. I didn't even notice that the first time.
Yeah, we don't
Oh.
care about most people. It's just the sensitive folks who
These
have complained.
sensitive little Sallies that he's here.
Yeah.
These little
They're
bitches.
uncomfortable. Sorry.
Point 2, leadership does, however, realize the importance of open, honest communication between members. With this in mind, leadership has compiled the following substitution list. It is imperative that all members understand and memorize the list so proper exchange of information and ideas can flourish.
I
all right.
love this list.
So
I think
I'll-
one of you
I'll
two
say-
should read the old one and I'll read the new one.
Sure. Yeah, because you don't want to read the old one. All
Right.
right. So the old
No.
one- Do the other
Cons,
one.
you read the old
Yeah, I
phrase.
think you
No,
should read-
I'm not doing it.
I
Well,
think
then
you
I'll
should
just
read
sit
that.
here and be
Come
quiet.
on.
Yeah.
No,
All
I
right,
don't.
well,
I don't
me
like
and
that
Kat will do
language.
it.
I don't like that language.
All
I
right,
like the
Kate.
new list.
You go old list, and I'll say what the new list is, Kate.
Okay. No fucking way.
I'm not certain that's feasible.
You've got to be shitting me.
Really?
Tell someone who gives a fuck.
Perhaps you should check with.
Ask me if I give a fuck.
Of course, I'm concerned.
That's not my fucking problem.
I wasn't involved with the project.
What the fuck?
Interesting behavior.
Fuck it. It won't work.
I'm not certain we can implement this.
Why the fuck didn't you tell me sooner?
I'll try to schedule that.
When the fuck do they expect me to do this?
Perhaps I can work late.
Who the fuck cares?
Are you sure this is a problem?
Khan's got his head up his ass.
He's not familiar with the process.
Eat shit.
You don't say.
Eat shit and die.
Excuse me?
Eat shit and die, motherfucker.
Excuse me, sir.
What the fuck do they want from me?
They weren't happy with it.
Kiss my ass.
So you'd like my help with it.
Fuck it. I'm on salary.
I'm a bit overloaded at the moment.
Shove it up your ass.
I don't think you'd understand.
This job sucks.
I love the challenge.
Who the hell died and made you boss?
Would you want me to take care of this?
Blow me.
I see. And on and on and on it goes. And it gives us the opportunity to have more inclusive speech and where we don't get banned on TikTok.
This is true.
Sometimes you get banned going
Wait,
through.
can you just do? I'm sorry. Can you just do the very last one? I
Sure.
like that one.
I fucking told you so.
I mentioned this once before.
Yes.
Super passive aggressive.
I just don't feel like that's as effective, really. Like I could see if you are the battalion commander or maybe even the company commander, I could see that level of professionalism. You have the staff NCO Corps and NCO Corps talking like this. We might as well shut this thing down. We just might as well just get rid of it. If we can't swear, what can you do?
I kind of like this now because everyone has this hidden language now. So if I keep saying, excuse me, sir, I'm basically know that I'm saying eat shit and die, motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that where it's almost like the old thing where, if you would have said good to go, or if you say Roger that or very well, where it's like, oh, fuck me then, right?
Because there's nothing you could do. If I say, I'm not certain that's feasible, chaps, you know that I'm saying no fucking way, chaps. No
Mhm.
fucking way.
And we used to
so I
know
like
if you
this.
said noted, that was the same thing as saying fuck you, First Sergeant.
Yes, basically. You're right. That's true. It's kind of giving them a secret little language. I love the challenge. This job.
But
sucks.
I will say, like, this is very prevalent in the civilian world too. Like, people are passive aggressive with their responses in emails all the time, and it's just
Per my last email.
per my last email knows, like, everybody knows, like, well, did you read my last email, you idiot?
Mhm.
And things of that nature. I do like this, but I also support what you said, chaps. I support our NCO Corps still talking very direct and using the old phrases, because if not, then push comes to shove, when it all comes down to it, Russia's gonna win.
Yeah, I agree. That's the reason
Absolutely.
why. That's the reason why they're losing right now, is because the NCO Corps over there don't swear. That's the whole reason why they're getting their.
Figure it out.
It is interesting though. Like moving on from this, it is interesting watching all the different news sources of how much equipment Russia is currently leaving behind in Ukraine, it is remarkable. Like I posted a TikTok on it, Zero Black 30 on TikTok, where Russia's the number 7 organization that is supplying aid to Ukraine in the entire world. Number 7, because of the amount of tanks and artillery rounds and bullets and shit like that they've left behind. They've given the 7th most aid of any other country. That's a crazy fact.
I think it's crazy how Russia has traded on their name for so long that everyone's thinking like, oh, we should all be afraid of Russia as big bad mother Russia. And now
Hollywood's to blame for that.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But now when the rubber meets the road and we see what they're actually capable of, they're not that tough at all. They're completely lacking of an NCO core. Their backbone is non-existent. And I think they're easily defeatable. And I think the fact that everything is still going on over there is really just a case of they just won't say, okay, yeah, I think you got the best of us and go away, because they're too prideful. I will give them that. They are prideful, but they're not going to take down Ukraine. No way.
But there's some reports that are coming out from other parts of the country. I think the Moscow group of Russians definitely are very much like prideful. We want to see this through. But all the other areas in Russia, like I guess the quote middle America of Russia, they do not feel that way at all. They have already come out and be like, we don't want to do conscription. We don't want a national draft. Just end this thing. And even some of the hardliners for the Russian hardliners are like, we don't want to be involved with this anymore. Let's get out. What are we even accomplishing here?
But where are you seeing that? Like, aren't they afraid they're going to get pushed out a hospital window? Like where are people seeing that sentiment? Like where can they express that? Who's seeing that?
A lot of it, Reuters had a shit ton of information and sourcing and things like that. A lot of it I've just from intelligence sources, from like Defense Now, just wherever I usually read my news, I'm seeing it pretty consistently across the board that the Russians are pretty fed up with the war effort because they're losing. I mean, the amount
this week has been one of the biggest weeks. And did you see it was a misinformation campaign on behalf of Ukraine that fucked them, which was pretty incredible. The story of how they did that. They made it seem like they were going to attack one area and then went to a totally different area.
Little Trojan horse action.
And it fucked Russia's world up. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see. And all the different, like Putin is having to basically grovel back to some of the other Federation leaders, and they're showing up late. Kyrgyzstan's leader showed up late to meet with Putin, which used to never happen. People used to show up 30 minutes early, and now they don't give a shit. What a misstep by that dumb motherfucker. But I'm glad that he did it. I'm glad. Hopefully this war in Ukraine is over soon, because I'm sure the people there, they deserve it. I mean, those videos coming out, it just proves once again, it's so much harder to win a war on somebody else's territory than on your own. Like having those videos of the different troops. There's one, I actually got a little emotional watching it. There was this troop that hopped out of a Humvee. You could tell he's still fully strapped, battle rattle. His face was like completely covered in dirt and like grime and shit like that. He hops out of the vehicle, and it's his grandmother that he meets whenever she gets out. And he actually liberated his grandmother's village. So being a liberator for your own people, and like the greetings that they were getting gave me fucking goosebumps. Obviously, you don't ever want people to be in that situation, but the Ukrainians, man, they took the fight to them.
They're not having it.
They're not. All right. Save Rounds and Alibis today is presented by our good friends at CrossCountry Mortgage. If you haven't bought a house in a long time, you know the process can be complicated. That's why you need to go with an expert. Our friends at CCM at CrossCountry Mortgage are experts. If you're trying to refinance, if you're trying to get into a new home, if you haven't used your VA benefits like that, if you haven't used your VA loan or anything like that, they know how to get you through that process. Just go to ccm.com/barstool, and you're going to be able to talk to an expert that is going to help you access your equity if you need to do a gap loan, if you need to do a new loan, if you need to check on interest rates, if you want to see how much equity you have in your home, anything that's going to be home buying related, you can go to CCM. Make sure you go to ccm.com/barstool now. Again, that's CrossCountry Mortgage LLC, NMLS 3029. All loans are subject to underwriting approval. www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. You're buying a house, go with CrossCountry Mortgage. It's a no-brainer. Let's move on to some save rounds and alibis. Cons, today we'll start with you.
Okay, first and foremost, I will say congratulations to Second Lieutenant Brendan Nickturn, who was named the Rookie of the Year in the PLL here.
Oh, nice.
Army lacrosse player. Was named Rookie of the Year. So I think that's pretty cool now that we see our athletes from the service academies going to professional sports. Very nice accolades for him. And two more things. Number one, we lost an amazing American, an amazing soldier this week, badass of the week. He is the gentleman who's the namesake of the Army's Best Ranger competition, retired Lieutenant General David Grange. Not many people who did this served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, enlisted in 43, got commissioned in 1950. So, when you look at his awards, there's too many to.
He's the one that started the Modern Ranger School too, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that he was able to serve in those, I bet you, I'd go so far as to say, what would you think is a reasonable size of a room where you could fit everybody who served in those three conflicts? I don't think that number is that high.
No, I would guess probably around 10,000 total that did it.
I even think that's high, maybe a few thousand, I would say. I'm completely speculating. I have no idea.
Yeah, me either.
And then lastly, I was curious what you guys think of this. So I was in a hotel this week, and there are just certain things I always do when I'm in a hotel room. Like, I use all the toiletries, even though clearly I don't need shampoo anymore, but I use the shampoo. Everyone always, I feel like it's very popular these days to put the thermostat really down super low. I always leave the TV on when I leave the room. Are there any things that you all do every time you go to a hotel room?
Yeah, there is.
Chaps pees in the sink.
Well, I pee in the sink, and I also will take one of the little washcloths and take the thing of lotion,
you've said this
fill
before.
it with lotion and leave it on the side of the bed where it looks like I jizzed a lot to a rag.
Well, I hope you're leaving a good tip.
I do.
Gentlemen. I don't do anything. I don't think. I always clean the room before I leave it. It's perfect every time.
That's very nice. That's very nice of you.
I get self-conscious about what they think about me as a person. So
yeah.
Catherine, any save rounds?
I do. This is kind of a long one. Do you guys have a second to bear with me on this one? So I had a few guys reach out about the anniversary of the attack on Camp Bastion in 2012. This is the 10-year anniversary of that. Just yesterday. So if you're listening to the show, September 14th was the date of the attack. And there was a local newspaper in Indiana, a Marine who lost his life from there. And they kind of did 10 years later, just remembering what happened and remembering the sergeant and the other gentleman who passed away. So I just kind of wanted to read over that again, because I had been stationed there in 2012 on Camp Leatherneck, right on the other side of the fence, but we kept all our air capabilities, everything was over on Bastion side. And I left, I think maybe a month before this attack took place. I had been there and I was physical security there. So I knew the layout of everything well. I used to drive over to the area where they entered to pick up Afghans to come in to work the shops and blah, blah, blah. So when it happened, I was I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. So I just kind of wanted to read. A few people had reached out. So here we go. It was September 14th, 2012 at Camp Bastion, a British military base in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. That night, 15 Taliban insurgents dressed in what looked like American combat uniforms penetrated the perimeter grounds and attacked the troops stationed inside. And this is remarkable too, because this camp was like a city. There was 100,000 people. It's you almost had this thinking. I remember half of the outposts just had rubber silhouettes that looked like a troop on duty. And because they were withdrawing at the time, they were taking numbers down. And because it was well, who's going to attack anyway? And as the attack began to unfold, Kokomo resident, and that's in Indiana, and United States Marine Sergeant Bradley Atwell, who was on duty at the time, realized what was happening and quickly ran to wake everyone up and alert them of the intruders. A short time later, Atwell, who joined the military after 9/11 because his family said he just wanted to help people, was struck and killed by a rocket-propelled grenade. He was 27 years old. At the same time, Atwell's cousin Jamie Kurkowski was having dinner at her grandmother's house in Howard County, and when she heard the news of the attack. And though the images were heartbreaking, she didn't really fear for her cousin's safety. To her knowledge, Atwell was in a totally different area of Afghanistan, miles from the attack. Her cousin was okay, she thought. He was surely safe. But later that evening, she was in bed when one of Atwell's sisters started banging on her window to share the tragic news. The man who loved skateboarding and playing guitar, the man who Kurkowski used to play Ghostbusters with when they were little, died in service to his country on a warm September night halfway around the world. And now this week marks 10 years since his passing. 10 years of missed birthdays, holidays, and random moments. 10 years of milestones that will never come for Outwell, like fatherhood or the opportunity to grow old. This past weekend, to mark the somber occasion, a large group of his family, friends, and military buddies from around the world gathered in Kokomo to raise a glass and pay respects to a man they call a selfless American hero. And the newspaper goes on, it caught up, it talked to each of them, and it really remembered him 10 years later. And I think these anniversaries, as time goes on, come up for all of us when we're like, oh my God, it's been 10 years since so-and-so passed, it's been whatever. The attack was described as one of the worst losses of U.S. air power in a single incident since the Vietnam War. The attack by these 15 Taliban caused over $200 million in U.S. damages. Together, the 6 destroyed and 2 damaged Harriers constituted 6% of our USMC inventory. To replace the aircraft, they had to deploy 14 new Harriers within 36 hours of the raid. It was a big thing. Atwell and Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Rabel were killed by a single RPG round, which exploded in the air above them, and 17 US and UK personnel were injured. But I had a few guys reach out about that, and it was one of those like, oh my God, it's been 10 years since that happened. And I think it's important to read those local papers and those memorials. Like, this is something that will affect all of us, especially on the anniversaries as time goes on. And I got choked up reading it. And so I just wanted to take a moment to remember them this week.
Yeah, I think those memories are very important to keep passing along. And it's one of the reasons why I love doing this show, is because we hear from service members and veterans all the time about, this happened to my buddy, this happened to one of my friends, can you talk about this, and keeping their friends' memory alive. And that's one of the main purposes of this show. And that happened this week. There was a guy named Charlie Kinney who lost his son, and he posted on Twitter. He posted on Twitter, and at the time that he did it, he only had like 7 followers or something like that. And somebody happened to see it and tag me in it. And he said, this photograph of 3 USMC officers and a Navy corpsman was taken in 2009 at 29 Palms. My late son, First Lieutenant Charles Kinney, second from the left. I would appreciate any help in identifying the others in this picture. Thank you. And he posted just a very random or regular picture that you would see a million times on somebody's Facebook, just a couple buddies taking a picture at the range. I put it up on our Zero Block 30, and other accounts put it up as well. Within 30 minutes, people were identifying these people, and they were reaching back out to this dad. That afternoon of him posting that, 2 days later, I think it actually took till it got to me, he was on a Zoom call with those 3 other guys that were in that picture. And they were telling him about his family. Like, to me, that is what the military community is about. The war in Afghanistan ended the way that it did. The Iraq war ended the way that it did. But our relationships with each other carry on, our caring about each other carrying on. And that's the reason why we continue to do this show, is because we love talking about the people who love this country so much, and we will continue to do it year after year. It's On the Retreat.